51 text. Gráinne Kenny, Luke Ming Flanigan is on the other line now. What would you like to say to him?
Well, I would like to remind him that the people of Roscommon didn't elect him to use his time in the Dáil to gratify his own needs and those of his drug-using friends. Our taxpayers' money, he's paid a very high salary and even higher expenses and out of our taxes, and that's not where our taxes should be going. He's there to represent the wider needs of the people in Roscommon, and he will get nowhere, as he well knows, on his private member's bill, which he says he's going to bring up in April, because there is no way that the people in the Dáil will support him. You get the few cohorts, of course, who will. But he's on a loser here, and he's certainly doing a disservice to the very good people of Roscommon, who I know very, very well.
Luke, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon to you, Joe. Sorry, no, I'd love to have joined you earlier, but I was actually doing an interview about turf cutting on Shannonside Radio.
What do you think of what Gráinne is just saying there?
Look, Gráinne is entitled to her opinion, and I'm entitled to mine. But I think just to give a bit of background to where this seems to have come from, if you don't mind, for 1 second. The story in the Daily Mail, in a sense, is not a new story. And, okay, it's put down as an exclusive. But I did an interview with a reporter from that newspaper about 2 weeks ago, Jason O'Toole, and he asked me about an interview that I had previously done with Hot Press about 2 years ago, and that's where all that information has actually come from. So, in fairness, it isn't a new story, but at the end of the day, I'm a public representative, and I have to look at issues and make conclusions from the evidence that I see. And from what I see is happening in Portugal, I think as far as Time magazine are concerned, after 10 years, they said it was a massive success. And you look at what has happened in Washington and Colorado, where they've legalized cannabis. Well, surely at least it's time for a debate. And fair dues to you, Joe, you're given that opportunity.
And you want to introduce this organisation, you're setting up a branch of Normal, is that it?
Yes, yeah. That's something that has been set up in many countries around the world. They were involved in the whole campaign in Washington and Colorado. And look, there are arguments for and against, and I have made my arguments on numerous occasions before why I think it would be a good idea from the point of view of the financial aspects and the stress that it puts on the criminal justice system. But I think you might know them at this stage, so that's the story.
Okay, and what do Normal want to do?
Normal want to tax and regulate the use of cannabis. But look sometimes it's said to me that there's a lot of young people listening, and am I sending out a bad example? I'm not saying that you should go out and use cannabis or anything like that. I'm just saying that if people do, I don't see the benefit of giving them a criminal record. But there are other aspects to me as well. I won 2 years in a row Sports Personality of the Year in Roscommon, 1 year for kayaking, for setting up a kayaking club and training nearly 200 young people, and the following year for setting up a snooker club. And also I have paid to do up our playground in Castlerea with half of my salary in the last year. So look, it isn't all as simple as people say it is. I'm not saying I'm perfectly right, Joe, but I'm entitled to my opinion.
Gráinne, Luke wants to tax and regulate.
Well, firstly, he can well afford to put money into the people in Roscommon on the high salary and expenses.
You're right, I'm overpaid, I agree.
He really shouldn't boast about that. I wouldn't dream of speaking about what I would give to the third world. It's really not very nice. However, what do I think of what he's saying? Well, Normal are a well-known American organisation who, and to quote, we will use marijuana, medical marijuana, as a red herring to force the legalization of all drugs. They are a group of pot-smoking Americans who are trying to legalize drugs on the back of vulnerable, sick people by selling, and this is a direct quote from Keith Stroup, who was the founder and first chairman of Normal, and also from a man called Burmas, another chairman. We will use the medical marijuana scam, and they use the word scam as a red herring to our goal of having all drugs legalised. That is a direct quote. These are the people that Ming Flanigan thinks that it's smart to introduce to this country. Well, I'll tell you one thing, they won't get very far, that's for sure.
Well, if he sets up a branch of Normal, he's perfectly entitled to do that.
It'll be Ming and Normal. There will be the potheads, but what will it be? Just another lot of the legalised cannabis brigade. You know, they go around banging their heads and then they forget to turn up for marches when they're supposed to be.
But Luke, isn't that the point, that you won't get anywhere with this? You even said yourself in the interview with Jason O'Toole in the Mail that you think Fine Gael are more conservative than they've ever been. You said 40 years ago, whatever. So your chances of getting anywhere with this are pretty slim.
Well, look at, I suppose, if all that it achieves is that it gets debate and discussion about it, and adult, non-hysterical debate, whereby points are argued back and over in the Dáil over a 3-hour period, and some people will say, oh my God, aren't there better things to be talking about? Well, from a certain point of view, that is correct. But people who talk about drugs being banned and the dangers of drugs can't, on one hand, talk about it all the time, and then when someone suggests an alternative solution, say that, oh, this isn't important to talk about. It is massively important to talk about. 18,000 people back in 2009 were given a criminal record for possession of drugs. That has a massive impact on the resources of the Garda Síochána. You just multiply out the man hours and the woman hours and the amount of money that costs, and then look at what it achieves, and then look at what they've done in Portugal and see that they have 50% less people using drugs than 10 years ago. As a public representative, it is my duty to look at solutions that work, and that's what I've done, and that's why I'm talking.
And it is my duty to contradict you.
Very good.
And you are using your time in the Dáil. You are promoting the youth. You're not standing back and saying, well...
No, I'm saying people should go out running.
You're promoting
That's
it. You have always promoted it. Also, I'm sorry, I've lost you. You just...
Yeah, but Ming, you also said, I think it was talking to Marion yesterday. I know you were on with Anton Savage as well, but talking to Marion about other TDs are using drugs as well. What was the argument there?
The point there is that, you know, to suggest that out of 166 TDs in the Dáil, none of them have used drugs in the past. It would be extraordinary if that actually was the case.
But what's your point?
And my point is that I was saying that in the context of Marion saying to me, as a TD, should I be saying that, and should I mention that fact? I am asked the question by a journalist. The question is, should I lie to them or tell the truth? I think it's better to tell the truth.
If you're saying that 26 people in the Dáil are or have been using cannabis, then why don't you name them and shame them like you did with the so-called Garda leaks on the people?
Joe, it's important to correct that. I didn't say 26 people.
You were part of a press conference naming them. Why don't you point the finger at the people in the Dáil and ask them underprivileged?
Grania, I didn't actually say 26 people. I didn't mention that figure in relation to that subject at all, with respect.
How many people?
What I'm saying is that it would be extraordinary if no one had, and it would actually be very unusual if some currently weren't doing it. I'm not making a judgment call as to whether that's good or bad, but in the context of people saying, oh my God, isn't it terrible that a TD admitted he used drugs in the past? Well, there's nothing that's extraordinary about it.
Do daft things, Ming. We all did. If TDs, when they were young, when they were at school, smoked a joint behind the shed, that is a totally different subject to what we're talking about here. That is just, you know, the recklessness of youth that we all went through. We are not.
And did you use illegal drugs when you were younger?
And we don't point the finger at these people. I'm sure you would be slow to see any family in your area singled out because some kid was foolish in his youth. Everybody experiments with life, not with drugs necessarily. Everybody doesn't experiment with drugs, but they do experiment with life. It's part of learning and growing up, but hopefully not with drugs, because they can be addictive.
Brian is in Dublin 4. Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, Joe. I just wanted to tell you about an occurrence which happened to me there about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Basically, I was coming out of a building and coming out with friends, and there was a car came around the bend and a massive screeching of brakes, and it hit a rubbish bin and then proceeded to hit a tree and knock down the tree. So with the noise of the whole thing, we thought somebody was dead or very badly injured. We ran over and helped your man get out of the car, and his eyes rolling in his head. I can't say where it happened or what happened, where it was, but
I don't know.
I'm sure something is going to happen about it. But basically, he had no wheels, he had no tires on the car. He tried to get back into the car and drive it off. His eyes were rolling in his head. I had to lift him out because my face was near his, so I couldn't smell it. There was no drink whatsoever. He was as high as a kite. And I just thought the program should be aware that there are guys out there, and you can't tell that they're on drink or whatever drugs. Mm-hmm. You could tell if they were on drink, but you cannot tell if they were on drugs, other than the eyes rolling in the head, as I say.
But I think
slurring of his voice.
Yeah, but I presume, Luke, if you did, if cannabis was legalised, there would be regulation in terms of you couldn't smoke it when you're driving or operating.
Well,
heavy
naturally
machine.
enough, it would be highly irresponsible of anyone to use cannabis or to use any other drugs, whether that be prescription drugs, alcohol, or illegal drugs.
Why would it be highly irresponsible to use cannabis when you're driving?
Well, it wouldn't be a good idea.
Why
one
not?
Should use drugs, because it just wouldn't be. No more than it wouldn't be if you were to have a drink. It wouldn't make sense, because it has a similar enough effect.
Cannabis is fat soluble. It doesn't leave the body like alcohol or other drugs.
Yes,
it
I'm
stays
aware
in the
of that
body
now,
for
Grania,
a minimum of 6 weeks. And
vitamin A, D, E and K are also fat soluble. Would you advise people to stay away from them?
What did you say?
I said vitamins A, D, E and K are also fat soluble. So would you suggest they were dangerous because of that, would you?
Don't try to deflect from the issue.
Well, it's
Cannabis
correct.
is a fat soluble drug. You must know that. You're an intelligent man.
Yes, so are those vitamins.
It doesn't leave the system. It stays in it. It stays in the brain. The brain is 30% of the body fat is in the brain. It is the brain that is mainly damaged. And people cannot drive if they have been using it. It will be still found in their system, one joint. So when you smoke on a weekly basis, you have a build-up, and you will have a build-up of cannabis for several months in your brain and in your body.
Luke, do you expect to get much...
That is a scientific measurable fact.
Luke, do you expect to get much support in the Dáil when you raise it?
I'm not really sure, Joe.
You have a fair idea now.
Well, to be quite honest, I've been spending my time on preparing the text of the bill and putting together the structures of this organisation to actually launch it. So from the point of view of canvassing support, I'll be honest with you, if I had done a lot of canvassing on it, I would tell you.
But you can judge. You can judge.
Well, I suppose you can judge yourself, Joe, and I'd say your judgment on Fine Gael would be that maybe you'd have to say...
You're in there, you see them all the time.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, it would be a surprise if Fine Gael supported it, to put it mildly, although there are people within Fine Gael who in hot press have admitted to using it. So
yeah, but would it be a surprise then if Fianna Fáil supported you?
It would be, I would imagine, a big surprise if this
would it be a surprise if Labour supported you?
All I know is Emmett Stagg stood up in the Dáil, in the last Dáil, and made a speech about why he thought it should be legalised. So, and I understand that there is feeling within the Labour Party, but I would imagine they would
given that Sinn Féin have led marches and campaigns to drug dealers' houses, I presume they're not going to support you.
Well, I'll tell you one very, very good way of doing damage to the drug dealers. Take the drugs off them and regulate them. That's the best way to do it, and in particular with cannabis. So if you want to take €500 million off the criminals, I can think of a great way to do it.
And then they can afford to have their hemp suits made up in Louis Copeland and go out and sell it as businessmen and undercut the others.
I got that suit made for me for charity, actually. I think it raised money for some organisation.
Oh, you love seeing that.
But is that not one of the...
That's very good form.
But Grania, is that not one of the strong... But Grania, is that not one of the strong arguments that is made by a number of people, not just Luke Flanigan, I've heard other people make it as well, that if you decriminalise it, you take it out of the hands of criminals?
Sorry, are you asking me that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Yeah, well, I've just told you, when you take it out of the hands of criminals, what happens is they undercut. Do you think they're going to walk away from such a profitable thing like the cigarettes? They will undercut whatever it is being sold for. So do the government give it out free from the taxpayers' money to drug users, or do they charge for it?
Well,
because
Luke says they would
then
put
the drug dealers will undercut them.
Yeah, but Luke says
and
they put eggs. The government
would
would.
Drug that is available, then the government can actually make available. They wouldn't.
Yeah, but
be
his
allowed.
argument is that the government would tax it and make money out of it.
Sorry, that they will. The thing that Flanigan hasn't referred to is what about the health consequences and the cost of drug use?
Claire is okay. Claire
we haven't been able to afford to treat
Claire is
our alcohol users, our
Claire,
alcoholics. They're woefully behind in treatment facilities and care.
Claire,
as indeed are the present. I know that the money may not be there, drug addicts, but the money will always be gone into the pay civil servants and into other areas. It will also go into the mental health area to treat people with mental health from the drugs use and the cancers and the other problems that come from it. Plus the deformed babies that are born from the fat solubility factor in cannabis, where it goes through into the fetus. And those babies will have to be cared
for. And Luke, what do you make of?
Are enormous.
Okay, Luke, what do you make of that argument that cigarettes are bad for you? Why? And if they were invented tomorrow, they probably wouldn't be legal.
Well, what I would suggest
so why benchmark everything against that?
Yeah, of course, yeah, and you're dead right to, because tobacco is an horrific drug. But I suggest you talk to a doctor, an eminent doctor called Donald Tashkin from the University of California in Los Angeles, who did the most widespread study on the smoking of cannabis. And up until he had done this, I had actually been on record on the radio as saying that it wouldn't be safe to smoke cannabis from the point of view of your lungs. The biggest study ever done by Donald Tashkin showed quite clearly that actually you were no more likely to get lung cancer than if you didn't smoke at all. And you can invite the man onto the programme, and he was actually employed by the Drugs Enforcement Agency in the United States of America. So my opinion on cancer and cannabis is that. So what other health effects is Grania talking about? Claire, I'd gladly answer.
Claire is a train. Yeah, Claire, go ahead, Claire.
Hi. It's interesting listening to what he's saying there. I'm not sure of that actual research project. I'm actually a trainee psychologist, and I work under two different psychologists as a psychology assistant and a PhD student. But it's just an interesting conversation because from a mental health perspective, there are hundreds of research studies which show that developmentally, and particularly in adolescents, the use of cannabis is actually strongly associated with the onset of certain schizophrenias, anxiety disorders, and it's also linked to suicide. And just in terms of legalization, it's particularly dangerous if adolescents can get a hold of it. And, we're all adults. I'm sure people who choose to smoke cannabis can access it however they like, but for an adolescent, it might be more difficult or more easy if it's legalized, much more difficult if it's illegal. But increasing access for those age groups can actually be extremely dangerous in terms of their long-term brain development and mental health. And recently I actually just did an audit where I did a simple thing of putting patient cases into a computer.
Claire, the line is so, and my headphones, the line is so bad that you're making strong points, but they're indistinct. Not you, but the line is. Stay with us, and we'll try and get a better line.
Joe, can I come back on that point?
I'll come back. I need to take a quick break. Luke, by the way, would you rate Dr. Ivor Brown? Do you know Dr. Ivor Brown, the psychiatrist?
I don't know very much about him, no.
Yeah.
But what I would say is adolescents and people under the age of 18 should not be using any drugs, whether that be alcohol or cannabis. And the studies that are cited there do show correlation, don't show causation. But there is one thing definite. It is people under the age who shouldn't be doing it, whatever drug that is.
Why?
Because their minds are not developed enough. and people of that age shouldn't be doing that.
17, 16?
Well, I would say 18, maybe 21. But that's something that can be decided after a debate. But the reality is, street dealers do not ask for identification. If you, in a cannabis cafe in Holland, sell to someone underage, and it is shown to be so, you are shut down.
But if they're
so
not...
Luke,
I know you mentioned in the interview you have been in Amsterdam the last year, but have they not restricted the sale of cannabis in coffee shops in Amsterdam to residents?
Well, look, it was widely reported that they were planning on doing that.
Okay.
But it was not widely reported, the fact that after considering it, the city councils decided in many cases not to do it. And in Amsterdam and in many other cities, the rules and the laws haven't changed. That is the benefit of me being on this programme today. I actually get that fact out there, and now you know it. Isn't that good?
And have you been in Amsterdam recently?
I was in Amsterdam, I think about 4 months ago, and my father actually came with me. And I have to say, he was shocked at how peaceful a place it was, how little fighting there was, and how friendly people were.
And did you bring him into a coffee shop?
I did indeed, and he hasn't actually smoked anything himself. He never smoked cannabis in his life, but he hasn't smoked cigarettes since 1977.
But did you smoke in front of him?
I did, of course. Yes, I did, of course. But it was he had an experience that taught him that do you know what? There are better ways of doing things.
Okay. 51551, back after this.
Joe Duffy! Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
Mark is in Dublin. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Joe. I just wanted to make the point that I've been a recreational cannabis user for quite some time now, and just that I haven't had any detrimental effects. And I've been listening to the show, and there was quite a few different views coming across, and some of them I did agree with, and then others then I thought were probably a little bit uninformed, and not correct, to be quite honest with you. And I thought that in Amsterdam they were trying to get rid of cannabis because, this is what I heard, was because there was awful traffic congestion heading into Eindhoven, and they thought that if they were able to actually criminalise or make it illegal for other nations, coming into Holland, then they'd be able to sort that problem out. And that's what I heard, and it didn't help anything. So they just decided that this law was going to come out that where you had to be a Holland resident and that there might be cards issued. But as Ming, I think, pointed out there,
that was abandoned, yeah.
Most people going into the coffee shops, as long as they're seem to be of any kind of sound mind and body, then the proprietors of these shops don't have a problem, selling marijuana to them. Okay,
Claire is back on the line. Thanks, Mark.
Hi,
Claire,
sorry, is that better?
Yeah. But you're saying you've studied this and you think...
Yeah, well, just I'm not saying that cannabis necessarily causes directly things like schizophrenia, but we know that there's a high correlation between the two, and that often patients come in and as part of the questionnaire they're asked, are you or have you ever been a previous smoker of cannabis? And the majority of the time, for specific conditions, the answer will be yes. Now, that's not to say that everyone who smokes cannabis, this will lead to mental health disorder, but I'm just saying that it increases your risk substantially, particularly for adolescents. And I want to qualify my point there. Adolescence does not mean people underage, and I don't think anybody would advocate people underage having access to anything, alcohol, tobacco, or cannabis. But adolescents can actually go right up in terms of brain development to 25 years old. And I know myself, as a teen, if my peers were able to get freely access cannabis legally, you'd be much more likely, just from a peer pressure perspective, to have a go and try it than if it was legal and much harder to access. And I think the idea that criminals will disappear just by legalizing cannabis is quite naive. I mean, if you think that legalizing cannabis will get these people, they'll just pick another target market. They'll just move on to heroin. They'll move on to heavier drugs. I think that's a very naive statement to make. And also, somebody made the point earlier that cannabis is a plant. You can grow it, and therefore there's no problem. But opium is a plant, and heroin is extracted from that. So, I mean, I think there's been a few good arguments, but all in all, I think people need to research themselves the effects of cannabis, particularly in terms of brain development, to kind of make a formalised judgment.
But your formalised judgment is that you wouldn't decriminalise cannabis and you wouldn't legalise cannabis.
Certainly not. Certainly not. And it's interesting, my views have actually only changed maybe in the last year or two, having worked with in the mental health services in the north of Ireland and in the south, and doing my own research. Before I'm quite a liberal person. I probably would have said, people are free to make their own choices. Look at Amsterdam. But in fact, when you look at the research, the numbers are quite scary. And all I could see if legalisation came into effect is that the government would be faced with long-term difficulties down the road in terms of much increased mental health.
Well, Paul, stay there, Claire, because Paul is in Dublin 6. Paul, you use it. You use cannabis regularly as a painkiller, you say.
I do, Joe. I do. But I can tell you something. That woman there that was saying that there'd be less.
Claire,
it's a lie that there'd be less criminals if there was cannabis was legalised. I can't agree with that, because I know one person for certain that wouldn't be a criminal anymore if cannabis was legalised, and that'd be me. I use it as a painkiller. I find it very, very effective. I've tried all kinds of different drugs. And as the woman rightly said, all coming from the poppy, like morphine or whatever, which is the backbone of current analgesic medication in healthcare.
But there are, as you know, there are moves afoot in the UK for medicinal cannabis.
Oh yeah, I mean, but the reality is, I'm a criminal at the moment. I've used everything from morphine down to simple Nurofen, and the cocktail of pills that I would have to take to have the same effect as cannabis is huge. And also the effect that it has in the system is huge, in the prescription drugs that it has in the system. They're addictive. Cannabis isn't. And to anybody who's tried to come off any opiates, any heroin, morphine-based heroin, those kind of drugs, anybody who's tried to detox from them, and I've never taken an illegal drug in my life other than cannabis. But anybody who's tried to come off,
would you say it's you didn't
very tough?
You didn't find it addictive?
No, cannabis isn't addictive at all. It's not at all.
Well, Grania, did you not argue the opposite, that cannabis was addictive?
I don't think it's an argument. I think it's
the fat solubility of cannabis that makes it feel as though you're not addicted to it.
Oh, sorry. I didn't think we were talking about feeling addicted. I thought we were talking about actual
very gradually, and it is not passed for use. It has not actually been granted a license in the UK. Doctors can use it, but it's not licensed. Also, if cannabis was to be legalised for use, it is not the smoked variety, because the smoke is toxic. It will give you lung cancer. It is very, very hot. It's stronger than tobacco smoke. So the other effects that you have, the bad effects that you get from cannabis actually outlay the good effect that you feel it helps your pain. And there are much better drugs.
Sorry, I never said I smoked cannabis. No, I never said anything about that. And the saying that the bad effects are outweighing the good effects.
Yeah.
Obviously, this woman has never, Grania, is it? Has never taken. Have you ever taken morphine
diacetyl? I never
diacetyl?
needed to use a drug.
But have you ever taken morphine diacetyl in a long term?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't.
It's a killer. It's an absolute killer of medication. Morphine. It affects you mentally, psychologically.
With problems with this drug, I have researched it. I know my field.
Have you ever taken cannabis?
And because I know my field, I don't smoke tobacco either.
Oh, no, I don't smoke tobacco either.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken cannabis?
That's not a big deal, but I don't need to use it. A doctor doesn't have to have a broken leg to set it, you know.
No, God, no. But you should have seen a broken leg. But I've talked to many doctors in hospitals around Ireland who have recommended
the good effects. And that's why it is illegal. It's dangerous.
Oh, sorry, no. Why is it illegal? I missed that major point.
It's illegal because it is dangerous. It is not dangerous because
morphine is dangerous. Alcohol is dangerous. That's not really a basis for something illegal.
Morphine is given in an absolutely different form.
Sorry?
And morphine cannot be compared to, the use of morphine in medicine cannot be compared to heroin, which is what you're talking about.
No, I said morphine diacetate is heroin.
In Ireland.
Morphine diacetate is heroin.
And it is not
simple as. It's, and all opiates, from codeine to oxycodone and any of the derivatives, are all come from the opiate poppy.
And you were never prescribed any of them for your pain?
I was, yeah, all of them.
And there were
I used them all, Joe.
There were no use?
Well, of course there is some use, but as Gráinne says there, you have to look at the whole thing. And for cannabis, it had the highest effect with the least amount of side effects. Whereas if you're on morphine, you're pretty much useless to the world, Joe. You know, I mean, it's. I have a lot of sympathy now these days for people who are addicted to heroin and things like that.
Your own use. People who are maybe like yourself, well set up, intelligent, you know, a good, if you like, home surrounding around. The people who are secure are not likely to go on to use cannabis in an addictive fashion. And that's why people would see people like you and perhaps
cannabis is not addictive. It's not an opinion or anything. It's just a simple fact. It's not addictive. If you've been taking opiates for any long period of time, and that can be up to 2 weeks, stopping taking opiates can result in hallucinations, cold sweat.
Such as methadone over a very long period is very damaging.
Okay, Jill is in Leitrim, one of Luke's constituents. You want to say good luck to Ming Flanigan?
Basically, yeah. But what I was saying was, the initial thing I got on about was there's basically two different types of cannabis.
Okay, well then we'll go through the two of them after this break. Luke, I know you have to go or something, don't you? Yeah.
Well, you've known I've had to go about 15 minutes ago. I've now missed a meeting because of it. But anyways, listen, there's a couple of things that have been said that are quite clearly not true. One was that they're thinking about medicinal cannabis in Britain. No, they're not. It's already there. It has happened. Gráinne also says that it is never given in medicinal form, in its pure form. Well, that is incorrect as well, because in Holland it is given in its pure form in bud. So really the facts need to be stuck to. And just finally, before I go, Joe, if you allow me the liberty, I'm just on my way to a meeting about the future of our forests. But as far as medical studies are concerned, I haven't actually heard any quoted. But if I can leave you on this, there is a university called the Johns Hopkins Research University in the United States, and anyone who knows anything about research knows it's a very good college. They examined marijuana's effects on the cognition of 1,318 people over a 15-year period. And this is what they found. Now, this isn't my words.
Okay, briefly.
These are their words. Now, let me finish. Researchers reported no significant differences in cognitive decline between heavy users, light